This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I'm here with Abbi Perets. Now, she is passionate about showing moms how to have it all. At successfulfreelancemom.com, I love the ring of that, Abbi teaches mothers how to break into freelance writing and land high-paying jobs while they're at home with kids. As a mom to 5 kids herself, including one with special needs, Abbi knows the unique challenges moms face every day, and she works to empower them to pursue their dreams and live a life they love. I love that. And she's also joining us from Elkanah, Israel today. Welcome to the podcast, Abbi.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here, Caitlin.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to dive into your story. So I'm just going to hand it over to you. I want to know all about you. What's your background? How did you get into doing what you do?
Awesome. Okay. So when I was 18, I moved to Israel. I was born in the States. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I moved to Israel when I was 18. And when I was in my early 20s, I was married and I was working in a small marketing boutique agency in Tel Aviv. And my first baby was born. And because I happened to have the most beautiful baby in the entire world, I couldn't stand the thought of leaving her with someone else and going into an office to work. So I decided I'm going to quit and I'm going to be a freelance writer. And I didn't really know what that exactly meant. I figured I was smart enough to figure it out. I'm very old. I'm 41. So 42, actually. According to my kids, I'm practically dead. And so this was before the internet was a huge thing. It existed, right? But, it wasn't like you could just go and take a course on how to be a freelance writer. That wasn't a thing then. And people didn't always have email. You would say to somebody, do you use email? And they'd be like, no, fax me.
Oh God. Yeah.
Long time ago. So I started working as a freelance writer and I started by writing, write what you know. So I pitched articles about parenting and pregnancy and breastfeeding. I wrote a lot about my boobs. It was an exciting time. So over the next couple of years, I kept having babies. I was never working full time. I was working 4 hours a day, and that was where I was comfortable. So that was where my earning power kind of topped out. I went from writing articles about parenting to talking to businesses and doing some business writing. I started writing corporate training programs. And over the years, I picked up some big name clients. So I've worked with I've worked with eBay, I've worked with Toyota, I've worked with CBS Radio. I've done lots of exciting and fun and cool things, but I always kept my business pretty small because, every year or so I would get pregnant with another kid and I would have a baby again and I would be nursing a lot and I didn't want to be working 8 hours a day or 15 hours a day. I liked it right there at that 4 to 5 hours a day. That was perfect for me. Everything was going great. And then I finally got to this point where my kids were all in full days of, school and daycare and whatever. And I was starting to get ready to take that next leap. And I had just closed a couple of really exciting projects and I had an advance check and it was very exciting. Then on September 13th, 2013, which was a Friday, the 13th, my middle son, who is the one who has special needs, was diagnosed with leukemia. And it was like the air just gets sucked out of the room. It's you're underwater. You can't even function. So that happened on a Friday. And by Monday, I had contacted all of my clients and told them that I would not be working. I had to return this deposit check that I had just gotten. I handed off things to people I knew, to colleagues, wrapped everything. And that was it. And I didn't work for the next almost 3 years. My son was in the hospital and he had massive complications that went along with his cancer. And it was terrible. I've had anxiety and depression before, but I've never understood how people could be so unhappy that they could consider killing themselves until that point when I just getting out of bed in the morning and going back to the hospital. My husband would do nights and I did days, and my husband would actually go to work at his job in an office during the day because he is amazing. Each morning when I would get up to go back to the hospital, just getting out of bed was so exhausting. I was like, wasn't that enough for my whole, no, I have to actually keep going. I have to get in the car and drive there and then walk up the stairs and be in the room and function and talk to, It was horrible. After a very, very long time, after over 2 years, they told us, one day, everything's okay. Your kid is going to be okay. He's better now. You can take him home. And that was weird because you go from like being very high touch with the hospital and, being around nurses and doctors all the time. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you can take your kid home. He's fine. And you're like, wait, really? Are you sure? Wait, what?
Wow.
So that was intense. And he was better. He was still a little bit weak and it took him time to really get back to himself. But when he was better and going back to school, everyone around me assumed that I should be better too. And I was definitely not better. PTSD doesn't just go away overnight because the situation changes. So I would get everybody out of the house in the morning, get everybody ready to go, get them out the door, and then literally just collapse on my kitchen floor sobbing. I could not get it together.
Wow.
Then you start to get upset with yourself. Why can't I get it together? He's fine now. What's wrong with me? And from that place, I knew I certainly was not in the mood to deal with client work and all the crap that clients can bring. But I thought, what do I want? What do I have? What should I be doing? And from that place of depression, one of the things that people advise is get outside of yourself, see what you can do to help other people, see what you can contribute. And when I thought about that, I thought about helping other moms do what I had done for so many years, which was, get started in freelance writing, what that means, and how to do it the right way. So like how to skip over all the mistakes that I made mistakes that like you have to really actively go out and try to make. When I was building my business, I managed to make them all. But I took a lot of good notes. I had a lot of process documentation that I had written over the years, and I knew what I was doing at that point. So when I thought about it, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to be connecting with other moms. I want to be helping them be at home with their kids, because that was even more important to me after going through this whole event. So I started, it was almost a year ago. My business is almost a year old, very exciting. I decided I wanted to build Successful Freelance Mom. I had a webinar to announce that I had a course, and I called the course Writing for Money, because I wanted to be very clear about the goal here. It's not just writing. It's not just, being passionate. It's about making money. So I had this webinar, I announced this course, and I signed up 13 students. And then I said, I should probably write this course now, huh? So,
Nice.
So I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks writing the course, and then it launched, and it was amazing. And I have never had so much fun in my life. And then I launched it twice more before the end of 2017. And it has just been incredible. And over the past year, I've grown the site, and I've been able to reach almost 1,000 moms so far and put them through. I have a free course on getting started in freelance writing. I have a blog with a ton of content. And then my signature program, Writing for Money, I've put about 50 students through that program, and watching them succeed has been amazing. I tell my students, my life now, I'm very into actively pursuing joy. I seek out the things that bring me joy, and doing this brings me massive joy. And it is so exciting to me, and I'm happier than I've ever been in my life.
I love it. I love it. And something that you just said a few moments ago really stuck out to me, because it's a theme that we have with Work at Home School, Work at Home Heroes. Inside Work at Home Heroes Facebook group, we talk about flipping the switch to other people. And you said that you wanted to see what you could contribute, see how you could help other people. And that is how you get out of your head. You were struggling with the PTSD. And I am honestly not surprised at all to hear that you just turned your life around when you stopped focusing on the stuff that was in your world, right? And you started focusing on other people, and then that lit you up. I'm just so thrilled to hear that worked for you, because I always say, you have to flip the switch. You have to flip the switch. I know how crappy things can be here at home inside your head. But if you get out and start focusing on other people, it's amazing what happens to your own problems. They just seem less significant. And that's because a lot of times they shrink, like your money problems start shrinking because people are paying you to help them. And it's just so amazing that your story is incredible. Can I ask you why you moved to Israel?
Sure. So I originally came, like I said, when I was 18. I grew up, my parents, my family is Jewish. I grew up in a fairly Zionistic household, and we had come to Israel several times on trips. And I was in college at the time. I was in my sophomore year of college, and I came on a semester break trip. And I decided, I had just turned 18 3 days before. And I was like, yeah, I want to move to Israel and join the Israeli army. So I came home from that trip and I told my parents that I was going to do that. And my dad, who apparently in 18 years of parenting me and my siblings had not yet figured out the fastest way to, screw things up with your kid, he said, you can't do that. And I said, I just turned 18. I can do whatever I want. So my dad, who is a smart guy, said, let me rephrase. I'm not going to pay for it. And I said, I don't need your money, which was a really stupid thing to say. So I moved to Israel when I was 18 with like $50 in my pocket and like 2 suitcases. And I was very fortunate because I was able to learn Hebrew fairly quickly. I joined the Israeli army. I met my husband, who was an officer in the Israeli Air Force, and we got married and everything was wonderful. At the time, I lived in Israel for 6 years until I was about 24. And then my husband and I and our first daughter, who had been born, moved to the States, and we lived in Los Angeles and then afterwards in Houston. And then about 6.5 years ago, we came back to Israel with our kids because my husband really missed being in Israel and being around his family. And we felt like it would be a better environment for our children for many reasons. One, Israel was conceived, in a socialist mindset. So with that background, it's a country that's more equipped to take care of the population that needs more help. So again, I have a child with special needs, and Israel as a country is more set up to help that population. And then it wound up really working in our favor because you have to find the good in every situation, right? And when my kid got cancer, all of his treatment was free because we have actual socialized healthcare here. So
how about that? And you mentioned in your application that before you started working at home, that you and your husband never saw your house in daylight. Can you give us a little bit of detail on that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, number one, it was like 800 years ago when I was a young newlywed, but I remember we lived in this 3rd floor walk up, and it was a brand new building. The whole city was brand new. It was Israel's first planned city, actually. And we had this apartment, but we worked in Tel Aviv, which was a good 45-minute drive in the mornings. And so we left early to beat the traffic, and we'd come home late, and we never ever saw the outside of that apartment building in daylight because we left, it was still dark. We came home, it was already dark. And I felt like this is not how I want to spend my life. And that was what made it really straightforward to me. Once the baby was born, the baby who's now 18 and a half, right? But when she was, it's crazy. Once she was born and like thinking, we're never going to see, that's not working for me. So, I mean, it was really obvious to me that I was not going to keep being outside the house that many hours. Now, my husband is kind of the opposite. He loves having a 9 to 5. He really does. He thrives on that. He has no desire to be, his own boss. And he has worked at home in the past. When we lived in Houston, he continued working for his employer in Los Angeles, but he worked from home. But he was very, very 9 to 5 about it. Like he had his office and he would go in there and close the door and work until 5, and then he would come out. There was just no way. Like, I'm also just being around people that many hours every day is not for me.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. And something else that stuck out to me was that you really started doing your freelance thing before the internet was a thing. That's the way you put it. And I love that you mentioned that, and that your journey has been that way, because there's so many people now who think that they can't do it because they live in a town where there's no jobs and nobody's hiring and stuff. And I'm like, well, how are you listening to this podcast? How are you listening to, this blog? How are you talking to me right now on my Facebook Live? You're using the internet. And now the internet is a thing, and the internet is expanding faster, the way I like to put it, faster than the actual universe. It's this digital universe, right? And so I love to encourage people to just get out there and be a part of that universe as it's expanding and get in on the ground floor, because you might think that, everybody's doing it because you are interested in it. And it's kind of like if you fix your eyes on this like dream car or dream house or whatever, and you just kind of see the things you want everywhere. It's kind of like that. And so I think it's quite inspiring that you've been doing this before the internet was a thing.
Absolutely.
And so at this point, it's like, what's your excuse if you're listening to this right now? It's like, Abby's been doing this since before the internet was a thing. And so the internet's a huge thing and it's ever expanding way faster than it was when Abbi got started. And I just love it. So I know there are people that are curious at home about your income. So what kind of income are you generating each month working at home?
Sure. So before 2013, I was at the point where I was pretty consistently bringing in between $2,000 and $3,000 every month. Some months were a little bit better. And then towards the end of that period, I started hitting that $4,000, $5,000, and even $6,000 a month just because I was able to scale up my hours. And then after 2013, when I started Successful Freelance Mom, so when I started building the business, I couldn't take on client work because I was busy kind of, creating my own content and doing that kind of thing. So, there were a couple of months where obviously I didn't make any money because I was just getting started. And then in the beginning, I was able to bring in around $1,000 a month in the very beginning, and then pretty quickly scaled that up to about $1,500 a month from Successful Freelance Mom. So from enrolling people in courses and from doing coaching calls. And then in the last few months, I've started adding back in client work. But again, with the joy, I only do client work that brings me joy. So I'm not writing, I'm not writing brochures about nail polish anymore. I'm not doing any of that. I'm writing email sequences for online entrepreneurs, and I'm writing sales pages. And those are basically the two packages that I offer for client work now. And I'm probably bringing in around $1,500, maybe a little bit higher now, maybe about $2,000 a month. I'm starting to get some retainer clients who want to, really up their email sequences games and make those, a consistent income generator as part of their overall sales funnels. So that's starting. I see that scaling a little bit over the next few months. But again, I'm easing back into things. I'm not trying to jump right into, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I'm trying to really be present for my kids and make sure that my family is taken care of.
Yeah, I think that's really, really smart. And this is part-time work you're doing.
Yeah.
So about $3,000 a month. That's a dream for a ton of people. There's so many people that come to me and they're like, I just want to make an extra $500 a month. Maybe an extra $1,000 a month would be icing on the cake because they could buy groceries, pay their mortgage, send their kid to some after-school activities, things like that they're not able to do. And that $1,000, even $500 a month would be life-changing for them. And so the fact that you're working part-time and can do $3,000 a month and you're loving it is super, super inspirational. I know that a lot of people listening right now are just nodding their head and be like, okay, if Abbi can do it, I'm going to figure out how to make this work. So definitely go visit Abbi at successfulfreelancemom.com. And we're going to talk a little bit after this recording about some stuff too. I'm excited. So let's talk about mindset, because there's tons of people that are like, I really want to do this, but I just don't have the confidence. And I'm always the one to espouse, hey, confidence doesn't just appear. You have to actually move. You have to actually learn stuff. And when you know what you're doing, then your confidence kind of grows, right? Naturally on its own when you feel confident in what you're able to do. So what kind of obstacles mindset-wise got in your way?
That's a great question. So actually, and I do want to jump back to one thing that you mentioned before when you talked about how a lot of people would love just that extra $500 or $1,000 a month. I have to tell you that I have students, who came to my course with absolutely no experience, and I see them now succeeding, and very part-time, like moms of really young kids who've got, maybe 3 hours a day to put into the business and who are bringing in consistently that $1,000, $1,500 a month, working 3 hours a day. So totally possible. And yeah, love it. So mindset is a big part of that. So when I teach students, one of the first things I talk about 3 foundational pillars. One of them is mindset, one of them is time management, and one of them is tiny habits. So the mindset piece, I love the work of Carol Dweck, who wrote the book Mindset, all about the theory of growth and fixed mindsets.
Very familiar with that. I have it on my bookshelf, actually.
Yes,
very
so
good.
So I love her work. I love her philosophy. And I really talk to my students a lot about that. So for me personally, I feel like in many ways, I don't want to say that because in no way was my son's cancer a good thing by any stretch of the imagination. But one of the side effects of having a child go through that, when you really don't know if you're going to leave the hospital with your kid or not, that's like the scariest thing in the world. And when that happens and you don't die, then it's really hard to get scared about a Facebook Live. So
yeah, very good point.
So there are a lot of things that I'm no longer afraid to do that I might have once been afraid to do. I was just over the New Year's holiday, I was in Thailand with my husband and I got braids put in my hair. And I didn't just get braids put in my hair. I got braids with like colored strings put in my hair. And of course, because I'm kind of a loser, I had them done with my brand colors. And then I came home with these colored braids in my hair and people were like, seriously, Abby, you're 42. And I was like, yeah, but I'm having fun. I'm really happy. So my children refuse to be seen with me. But you know what? Take risks, do scary things. I believe in that because I feel like a couple of things. I feel like what's the worst thing that can happen? Right. You might look a little bit silly. You might make a mistake. One of the stories that I tell is when I first came to Israel, I had to learn Hebrew. I didn't know it. I certainly didn't know it to speak it. So I started learning, and my teacher said to me after a couple of weeks, you know, you understand everything, but I noticed that you're afraid to speak. And I said, yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. And she said, yeah, and I thought about it and I said, you know what? She's right. So what? Somebody has to speak English incredibly badly before I absolutely can't understand what they're saying. I mean, really, really badly, right? So I figured it would be the same thing for Israelis. If I was speaking Hebrew and I made a mistake, they would probably understand what I meant. And yeah, they might even correct me. And you know what would happen then? I would know how to say it right the next time.
Yeah. There's never any failure. There's only learning. I love it.
Right. I think it's also in that, what was the movie? Zootopia, Zootropolis. It had different names in Europe and in the States, but there was the Shakira song and there's a line in there about nobody learns without getting it wrong.
I love that.
And there you go.
Yeah. Well, so, Abby, I can definitely,
from Shakira.
I can definitely hear the joy in your voice. And you said in your application that your life has just been full of joy. I want to talk, you mentioned, you know, people making comments about you being 41 with your colored braids. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about, a lot of people kind of worry about what other people are going to think when they jump into their work at home journey. So in your journey, did you have to deal with any unsolicited feedback from friends or family? And if so, how did you navigate that?
Oh, that's another great question. So again, my journey is a little bit, let's say, atypical. So I have my son who has special needs. So and my son's particular syndrome is he has an overgrowth syndrome. So he's physically very large for his age and developmentally disabled. So when he was young, he was 2 years old, but he looked like a 6-year-old. He was as developed as a 6-year-old, but he was 2 and developmentally disabled. So he acted like a 6-month-old infant. So he would have these tantrums and there was no reasoning with him because he had no language at that point. So you get a lot of unsolicited comments there. And I decided a long time ago that my mental health matters a lot more than other people's discomfort. So when they say rude things to me, I respond, and not necessarily in the most polite way. I have a tendency to say things like, you know, I don't know why you think a comment like that is helpful, or, you know, I'm asking for your support and you're not being very supportive. So I'm also very, very fortunate that I have a very supportive family. My parents, my dad, when I do like a Facebook Live, my dad will like it. There are times when somebody has asked a question about my course and my dad, like on Facebook, and my dad knows that I'm sleeping. And so he'll answer it. He'll be like, oh, it's a great course. You should totally take it.
How about that? Yeah.
You know, my parents are amazing, amazing people who have never been the kind of people to say, I told you so. I was just waiting for you to fail. I mean, yes, I was an obnoxious 18-year-old and I'm sure I made my parents miserable, but they were pretty cool about the whole thing. So I'm very lucky in that regard. And I'm also just very upfront about, I don't care so much about what other people think. So I'm really good at telling them to back off when I need to.
Yeah. And I think the best thing is to succeed anyway. And in my own journey, I think back to when we were first starting our online business, my husband and I, you know, his parents thought, you know, this was the dumbest thing that we could do. You know, we wanted to go to Ecuador for a year, South America for a year. And they said, well, if you want to go waste a year in Ecuador, go right ahead, you know, because he was quitting his corporate job and they had made their money and built their life, you know, working for 40 years for the same company. And that is awesome because they enjoyed it and they were very successful. And I have major respect for that, but it was not for us. And that's all they knew. And so I definitely don't blame them for their doubts, but it was hard, you know, because we wanted them to be supportive, but they just didn't know anything about what we were doing. They didn't know about working on the internet. And they thought, hey, you know, this wave of luck you've been having, even when we started to be successful, they thought, hey, it could end at any time. So just be ready for that. You know, they were so doubtful. And they told us when we got to 3 years, we were still going strong, that they would stop bothering us. And that's exactly what happened. And on our 3-year anniversary of our business that had just grown exponentially because we kept going when the going got tough, we we decided to get a Tesla and as kind of a celebration thing. And it's not a purchase, it was a lease through the business. And so it helps with our taxes actually. But I would never, ever recommend, if you guys are listening, you're like, I want to buy a Tesla. Do not buy a Tesla. That is the dumbest thing you could ever do. But if you could have it as like, something for your company that could help with taxes and whatnot. I'm not a tax professional, so full disclosure there, then do it. Life is short. And if you have the money and you want it, then don't deny it to yourself. So that was a great way to celebrate and a great way to be like, see, I told you so, this, people in your life that just don't believe in you. It just makes you feel really good to prove them wrong. And so I use that doubt. I use people's doubt criticisms as fuel to my fire. I'm like, you just wait, you just watch. If you don't believe me, just watch. What's that song? I don't know who sings it, but is it a Bruno Mars song? I don't even like Bruno Mars, so I don't know. Yeah.
It's about proving people wrong. And it's also, there's so many supportive communities online. So even if you're not getting that support, and if what you're getting is the unsolicited criticism in your offline life, you can find the support that you need in so many communities online. And that's a big thing. I mean, there are some groups that I couldn't function without their support because they just, they know how to lift you up when you're having a rough day. And there are definitely going to be rough days. But, the point is to not let that turn into a reason to stop what you're doing.
Exactly. And that's really a big reason why I do what I do as well. And what you do too, is because you want to be that beacon of light for people. You want to create this community. That's what Work at Home Heroes Facebook group is all about. That's what, successfulfreelancemom.com is all about. Even as we're running out of time, so I've got to ask you my last question. Unfortunately, I couldn't talk forever. I love this, but I know there's some people that they've listened to you. They've heard what obstacles you've overcome in your work at home journey, but they're still scared to get started. And so I want to ask you what final piece of advice you give to someone who's sitting there shaking in their boots and thinking, yeah, that worked for Abby and she just got lucky or whatever. What would you say to that person?
So I think it's really, really important to be exceptionally clear on what you want to do, who you want to serve, and why it matters to you. It doesn't matter. You can learn all the tactics and strategies and tips and tricks and whatever, but you need to have a why, and that why needs to go deeper than I want to make money on the internet. So that's not going to get you out of bed and when it's freezing and you're tired and you just whatever. You have to really know who you serve and why that matters to you and really connect with that in a deep, deep place. And if you do that work, in my opinion, everything else falls into place. I see it again and again with my students. When they really do that deep work and figuring out what do I want to write and who am I writing it for and why does it matter to me, then it becomes much easier for them to go out and actually get the work. And I think that translates to really any business model. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. And it is so much in alignment with what we preach at Work at Home Heroes. It's like, you've got to figure out who you want to serve and flip the switch from thinking about your problem. I mean, you want to make money, right? So, but it can't be your only goal because that's not what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. You got to know why you want to make money and whose problems you want to solve, because those people are the people who are going to pay you. And so that has to matter to you. And if you can't stop thinking about your own problems, then it's going to be awfully hard to solve problems for other people. And that's all making money is solving problems for other people and providing value. So if you focus only on solving your own problems, it's going to be awfully hard to get people to notice you and for them to believe in you, because it's noticeable when you're just in it for the money and your pitch emails come off all desperate and stuff. And so, but it's so refreshing when somebody who's pitching their services to me or responding to an ad for something that I need, when they make it all about me and it's not just, hey, this is what I won't do, or hey, I know you said you needed this, but I don't do that, and here's why. And I'm like, I don't care about that. They make it all about them. And I hate it. I just delete the email. I don't even respond most of the time. So, well, Abbi, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring story with us and just being a shining light in the world of so many people who want to work at home, but just don't know how to get started or have those mindset blocks. Definitely check out, we're going to have it in the show notes, Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. It's on my bookshelf. It's on Abbi's bookshelf. Definitely worth the read. It's going to blow your mind in terms of who's really in control of creating your life. So Abbi, we we mentioned it several times on the podcast, but I want to give you one more chance to say, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Sure. Come and visit me at successfulfreelancemom.com, and I would love to hang out with you there. I've got, links to everything right there on the homepage. You can find all the information you need. I answer my email personally because I'm not quite as famous as Caitlin yet. So in an almost timely manner. So feel free to reach out to me. I would love to hear from you.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Wow, what a journey. And you can ask Abbi any questions you might have about her episode in the dedicated thread within the Work at Home Heroes Facebook group. The link for that is in the show notes. And feel free to leave us a review on iTunes if you feel so inclined. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.